Introductions. My name's Robin Scott. I work on the marketing side of the Inhabit brand. So that's Bluetent, Q4 launch, and BizCore. Some of you are familiar customers there. I spend a lot of time talking about strategy, business operations, different marketing tactics to kind of level up your revenue goals for this year. But I certainly at the Rise and Shine spend a lot of time talking about owner acquisition, owner retention. And so this webinar today is really fun for me. Go ahead, Grace.
Thanks, Robin. I'm Grace Suter, Director of Marketing Services at Bluetent, and I have been in the vacation rental industry for close to 20 years, just like Robin. First as a property manager, and then eventually found my way over to marketing about 10 years ago. So I've worn a lot of hats, just like a lot of you on this call probably do as well. And I was actually a Bluetent client back in the day. So it's been really fun to join the team and work with the same people who used to help me out in the beginning. Go ahead,
Awesome.
Kaylee.
Well, thank you, Grace. Hello, everyone. I'm Kaylin Wilkerson. I'm one of the software consultants at Streamline. And really, my goal is to work with our clients to increase efficiency and drive more revenue. Whether you're on Streamline today or you're looking for a new PMS, really, my role is to come in and help your team with your tech stack and to ensure a smooth transition. So excited to be here today to talk to you all about strategies and the different love languages of property owners.
Awesome. So I'll walk us through the agenda. Whether you've read the book or not, we thought it was kind of an adorable topic because we all we're going to walk through sort of different owner profiles and then different ways that we can sort of talk to those folks. So we'll start with different owner profiles. I'm sure a lot of you will be aligned with how we sort of put these folks into different buckets. And then we're going to talk about the love languages that we can kind of apply to make sure that we're treating these owners well, or even bringing new owners into the program. We're going to leave with some key takeaways, and then we've got a cute little test at the end. Q&A can happen throughout this whole webinar, so please use that little Q&A button. The chat, we have also got somebody monitoring the chat as well, but Q&A is a little bit easier. We can answer them if it's kind of in line with what we're talking about at the time, or if we don't answer you right away, we'll get to the Q&A towards the end. So that's what our agenda looks like for the day.
Awesome. Thank you, Robin. So we'll kind of kick things off with Meet the Neighborhood. Like Robin said, you guys will probably relate to this a lot with the different owner profiles that we've identified. But I think of this a lot as similar to guest, right? Guests have different motivations, just like owners, right? Owners have different motivations for their asset, right? Some are more revenue driven. And so being able to tie those different personalities and speak to those owners with, marketing collateral and also data-driven tactics. So we're going to dive into the owner profiles here in our neighborhood.
The margin minders. So these, I think, are arguably maybe your most difficult owners, and you guys will feel the vibe. These are the folks that are really kind of are revenue driven. So they're looking at their rates, they're analyzing their rates, their calendars are typically a little more open than some other owners because they're looking to maximize their revenue. These folks need very firm boundaries. I do encourage PMs to take as much ownership over rates as possible. I think owners driving rate decisions makes things messy for you. It puts a lot of stress on your team, and it doesn't really enhance the guest experience if you've got wonky rates on comparable homes. So these guys really need to be spoken to in a manner of authority and expertise. So we really will talk through some takeaways for these margin minders, kind of the rate divas, as I like to call them.
I love that. Also, too, I always look at it as these owners care about proof and not promises. The more you can show them of how you're, maximizing the most revenue for their property, the more trust they're going to have in you as the manager.
Yep.
So we'll go on to the second one.
So offsite overseers, these are second homeowners. Most of your properties are second homeowners. We do know that, but they really rely heavily on local management. So this is where you can really win people by establishing trust, by establishing operational professionalism, like showing them your property care staff, keeping close tabs on the performance of their home. And we're going to share some things in your software that you can look at to kind of keep track of all this stuff so that anyone on your team at any one time can report back to these folks on what's been going on in the home. I think we kind of forget that that's important to people. And so again, the whole purpose of this webinar is to really float to the top how to be available to these owners and talk to these owners, and really anyone on your team should be able to talk about property care and protection that's happening for this particular owner profile. Grace, as a PM, this was probably pretty important to you, like being able to talk to different owners about what's going on in the home and having a strategy or documentation to be able to have anyone on your team share with what's going on in the home, like the AC needed to be repaired or there was a fridge leak.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when I think about like the offsite overseers specifically, I kind of think of them as people who take a lot of pride in that property. It might be like, it's a family home. It might have been passed down, or it might be something that they intend to pass on. So I don't think we're going to find an owner that's not somewhat revenue minded, but these people are really putting their trust in you that you're going to take great care of this house.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. These are the ones that do keep close tabs on you. They've got eyes everywhere, right? They might be driving past the property to see how you're taking care of the property. They might be speaking to neighbors, right? And I think it also relates to a lot of these owners, with the pride in ownership. They've spent their entire lives to be able to afford these assets. And so it's really important to them to be able to know that their home's in good hands. So
sorry, go ahead, Grace.
I think back, these are homeowners that I think that I would have had a meeting with them in the home, not in my office. They would be like, I want you to come here and I want you to feel what it's like to be in my home. I want you to see how I like it kept. I want you to understand like why this is so important to me.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, awesome. So we'll go into the third one here.
Awesome. Service seekers. These guys can also be high maintenance, maybe, if you want to say. This is where software really can move the needle for folks because it can give automated messaging about what's going on in the home. This type of owner is obviously quick to churn. So for me, I think it's really important to make sure that they're getting top tier professional services added to their home. You really need to be cognizant to not send the JV league to operate on these homes because it's really important and they're really watching you like a hawk. Again, with automations in your software as to what's happening in the home, you can really help educate these owners on what you're bringing to the table as a property manager, the professionalism of your services team, things like that.
Yeah, and to touch on what Robin's saying too, this is where your tech stack comes into place. These owners care about the technology you're using, but they also care about simplicity and making it easy for them to understand what you're doing, and then also streamline processes. So they like simplicity, right? And just making things super simple for them.
Yeah, I think needy comes to mind, maybe a little bit needy, but Kaylin's point, you can address some of that with a great tech stack. And I think that these types of homeowners tend to be kind of appeased with like whistles and bells. They want to see the shiny new thing that you might have to offer them, but they might also be lured away by somebody else's cool tools or cool toys. So you need to communicate with them, stay in touch with them and keep them engaged so they don't get distracted by something else that might be going on down the road.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, good point. And then the last one here is the loyal lookouts. I like to call these the lifers. They're not going anywhere. They're relationship first. And I think that, this business, real estate in general, is a communication business. It's all about communicating with your owners and the relationship. And people buy because they, off of people that they like, right? But also they stay because they have that relationship. So I think just always remembering that, right? And to create genuine connections with your homeowners on a regular basis is super important for these types of owners.
Yeah, and this is where consistency comes into play because I think we can go through a year where we might be consistent and then we kind of drop the ball on our quarterly newsletter, and we'll talk about different tactics here to communicate with these people. But like the loyals are in your program. If they churn, it means you did something pretty wrong and they're going to be really hard to get back. They're not lured away, but they do need consistency to get that confidence and that relationship built.
Awesome. So now that we've really identified these types of owners and different personas and different traits that owners have, how do you internally identify those owners amongst your entire organization? And what we have on the screen here is actually, it's powered by your software through Streamline. It is our phone system. And what this does is every owner that's saved in your system it's in the CRM. So when an owner calls in, this pops up on your screen internally, and it'll show you some quick things like active work orders. It'll show you property performance, which I think is huge, right? It gives you insight at a quick glance how they performed last month, how they're performing this month, and then what's projected to perform the next month. And so having that quick glance at performance, those are really good talking points for that owner. The other thing here too is owner traits, and being able to tie those owner profiles to the owner traits here at the bottom, where you'll see great owner, birthday, likes to talk. If you answer the phone, you might be on the phone for 2 hours. But just really creating awareness within your organization of these types of owners. So that way, when you do get on the phone with them, you're able to quickly identify different personality traits. You also have things like reservations that you can take a quick look at. If maybe they're having a low performance quarter, maybe they've had too many owner blocks, right? And so just being able to identify those things at a quick glance is super cool. Yeah.
What's the name of this piece of the software specifically?
Yep.
Is it
It's called
Streamphone?
Stream. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Cool. So this is arguably the best way to manage stuff. Like a CRM in all aspects of your business is important, but to have it within your software, especially if something pops up, gives your team, huge amounts of clout and professionalism. If an owner calls, I'm seeing a lot of owner behavior where they are calling and testing out your team. And if you're ahead of the game and it's an owner, then that makes a huge difference. This helps your team. You could even steal our love languages and create a tab called, the loyal lookers or whatever
The
that is.
margin minders.
Margin minders, yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of rate divas, you could use margin possibly. But yeah,
Really quick too,
go ahead.
Robin, this is also good for not only owners, but using Streamphone will allow you to identify guests. So let's say you have a guest of an owner staying, right? And that is a, strong relationship you want to keep because they're a guest of an owner. And so you're able to identify even things like that. So it's for owners, guests, vendors that you're working with. All of the same pop-ups will come up. So it just really creates a awareness amongst your organization.
Yeah, and then the next layer here, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but the next layer that applies to every single one of these avatars, owner profiles, is marketing, right? So marketing applies to all of these, but we want to be specific, and having all of this stuff sort of tracked in a CRM allows us to really segment our language and how we talk to these different owners. And again, guests is even more important to me because that's, where most of your revenue comes.
So awesome. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the learning the languages. Now that we've identified the profiles, what are those languages?
So yeah, I hope a lot of you have read the book because I think these are cute. But the words of affirmation, this is just really making sure that we're not as all business minded, right? So the messaging here is you really want to be kind and say nice things to these owners, be sincere, specific, tailored communication to these different owner profiles is really important, because if they're kind of your loyal people, you really want to kind of communicate that they've been in your program a long time and you appreciate the partnership that you've built. If they're sort of your rate-minded folks, then you want to really speak to them and say, hey, we're on top of this. Here's some market data. Here's what's going on. Here's some comps to your house, and here's how we're setting rates. And those rate-minded people definitely want to hear about the marketing stuff that you're doing as well. So this is, engaging authentic messaging and content that resonates. I sort of went through that. Personalized is huge, positive and encouraging. Testimonials and case studies are really, really great for any of these owner profiles. Grace, what else do you want to talk about in regards to words of affirmation?
Yeah, well, I guess on the case study thing, I would make sure that your case studies that you're putting together are speaking to your avatars that you've identified within your pool of homeowners, so that you are your message is going to land. You've identified that these types of people are interested in your project. Make sure you're talking, or your company, make sure you're speaking to them in a way that they will appreciate it. And then, yeah, use personalized, positive, encouraging language. I think of those margin minders, they're going to want to see numbers. They're going to want to see charts. They're going to want to see data. Whereas, some of the other groups might be just interested in some more fluffy stories or things like that. So hitting on all those things, though, throughout your efforts are going to make sure that you're not excluding a certain type of homeowner from your marketing message.
Yeah, and then to add to tools to use on how to communicate this to your owners, utilizing your owner portal inside of your software to push quarterly blogs, right? Push notifications to that app too. So that way, when you do add new content to that owner portal, they're aware that there is a new blog post or there's information about what's going on at the company, what your company is focused on. And then also being able to share testimonials and share guest feedback. So the cool thing actually about Streamline is you have the ability to customize what you show that owner. For example, guest reviews. It goes into a pending status. And so you have that ability to push it to the owner portal if you want to give visibility into guest feedback. So there's a lot of ways you can communicate these types of things and this messaging through that owner portal.
Yeah, I think some owners don't care that much about reviews, but again, the whole purpose of this webinar is really thinking about segmentation and how we can accurately communicate with specific owners. And there are definitely owner profiles where you want to share those testimonials. That's a big warm fuzzy, and to have it automated to pop into their inbox, or their owner portal is just kind of a special treat to keep that retention strong.
Yeah.
Quality time. So this is really, making specific time for your owners. And can you just skip to the next slide, Kaylin, so we
Yeah.
can talk right through? It's kind of self-explanatory. I'm having a really hard time with my words today, but it's genuine interactions. And sometimes I know we all get really busy, but if you're looking at your marketing calendar, really setting aside a day, like maybe 2 days a year, where it's just owner focused. It could be, it could be an in-person event, maybe at your office or maybe at one of the properties. You could allow people to join you virtually there as well. You spend some time just kind of doing an annual business review, talking about who's joined your team, how are things looking, market data you can always get from folks like us that we can share, things that are going on, new information, philanthropy that the company is participating in. And they're really, really successful to, again, drive in that retention. Q&A sessions, I don't think a lot of PMs do that, kind of open up the ability for owners to ask questions. You could have that open all year round if you really wanted to on your website, things like that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of quality time is driven through training. Sometimes you have to train your owners on how to communicate with you as a company, right? And I think I'm going to walk you through the owner portal on the next slide so you can actually see how you can start training your owners on how to use that owner portal. But, sharing information in that portal and then showing them how to use it, right? Whether you do that quarterly, I always think having owner services, a specific representative at your team who is consistently calling that owner, right, to just check in, right, to make sure that they have everything that they need. So I'll go ahead and go to the next slide to show you guys a glimpse of what the owner portal looks like. A couple of things here too is sometimes you have owners that own multiple properties, and so they need to toggle between those properties. They're able to do that through their portal, so they can look at performance across all of their assets. Now, keep in mind to have everything turned on in this portal, so if there's things in here that you feel just don't apply to that certain love language to that owner, you can customize this in the sense of getting rid of some of those things. But you could even give them transparency into reservations. So what's to come, what's in the future, what are the future reservations, what are the current reservations, owner blocks, looking at their calendar availability. You could do guest of an owner stay so they can book that directly through their owner portal. Work orders. A lot of companies want to give access to showing work orders. You can have an active, pending, closed status. Being able to add new work orders is super convenient for your owners. And then reporting. This can be things like your month-end statements, profit and loss reports, occupancy charts, future reservations. There's a lot of good reporting that you can push to this owner portal. Assets, those are things like valuable items in the property that you need to keep track of for that owner. That is a way that you show your love language, as well as showing that, hey, we're taking care of those valuable items in your property. And maybe we're doing quarterly inspections to make sure everything is still, in good shape. And then you have guest reviews, guest feedback you can push in here. Again, you have control over what guest feedback you share to the portal. So it doesn't automatically go in here. It goes into a pending status, and then you can either approve or decline that status. And then one of my favorite on here is service tasks. I'm sure a lot of you just get blown up by homeowners all the time, calling in, right? Being able to train them to use the service task to submit a ticket, and it'll go to that owner services manager that communicates with that owner. So that's a really good way for your owners to communicate. There's all sorts of things you can do in here. So anything else you want to add to this, Robin? But
Yeah,
I think
well,
we
we do
covered
have
everything.
we've got a great question, which we haven't really tied into from Allie about tips and tricks to training owners how to communicate. And I think my stance there, or I don't think, I know my stance there is that you need to lead the charge with communication. So you need to communicate more with your owners. You could do even 15, 20-minute little webinars where you show them the owner portal, you show them the different channels they have, that you have available for them to get to you. So it's email, phone number, chat in the owner portal. So doing those quarterly, I think, is really important. I don't think you need to have a monthly newsletter for owners, but I would say a bi-monthly is always a good idea, especially showing just your authority in the market. And that's things like what's happening in real estate, who are we hiring, who's on the team, frequently asked questions, like show that you know what's going on with your business, and putting that foot forward and leading the charge with communication is, I think, how you get that reciprocated owner communication back.
I love that,
totally
Robin.
agree. Go
Really
ahead.
quick, I think too, a lot of this starts in the onboarding process.
Right.
If
Yeah,
you
good
miss
point.
this when you convert that owner into a new, into your program, if you miss this part of the onboarding process, you're not really setting a good foundation for that owner to understand what's to come next. And so, preparing them to go through a training process from the beginning once you convert that owner is extremely important. If you're utilizing this homeowner acquisition CRM and Streamline, it makes it super easy for your business development agents to collect all this data and information on the types of homeowners during that sales process. And then once you convert it into a homeowner, all the data is saved for your onboarding team. So it's just passing the message amongst your organization.
I completely agree that a lot of this happens in the onboarding process, and that's really a way to set standards and expectations for your homeowners, and also for them to set standards and expectations for you. I think that's a good time to say, how would you prefer that I communicate with you? Do you like text? Do you like phone calls? Do you like emails? And then in return, say a good way for you to communicate with me is to use this portal. The phone
That's
call.
why, yeah, a lot of PMs are starting to embrace an onboarding fee, because that means the owner is actually invested and they're going to pay attention during this. And that's
Love.
where that trust and communication is built. It's not nickel and diming. It basically, you paying attention to this process is important. So I need to collect a fee to just make sure that you're really on board with being like an appropriate partner.
That's interesting. And it sets the tone. Like, this is a partnership. Yeah, this is not one-way street. This is a two-way street.
Yeah.
So cool.
We do have one quick question, Kaylin. I know we've got a little bit to go through, but do work orders get submitted through the Property Care app? Can you kind of explain how that works?
Yeah, it does go into a pending status similar to like your guest reviews. So
Okay.
it's not going to automatically go there unless you want it to. So, as a lot of people don't want to show off everything. There's also a really cool feature though that, let's say internally you name a work order for your team. You guys have a certain way of communicating, but then to your owners, maybe you want to display the description differently in the owner portal. You can customize descriptions, but internally have it something completely different. So
Awesome.
hopefully that answers your question. If you want to dive into this owner portal, just at the end, we'll share our information. I'd be happy to take you through it.
Great. So acts of service, this is really important too. I would encourage kind of assigning certain owners to certain people in on your team. And that's kind of where you can accomplish the acts of service, because it's a heavy lift. So that's sort of thoughtful efforts that could, I mean, we do talk about gifts in a little bit, but it's really showing that you're there to be helpful. You're kind of willing to do anything. So it's almost having an account manager for the specific types of owners that you know are maybe needier or more sensitive. That's where the acts of service kind of piece comes in.
Yeah, and to touch on what Robin's saying too, almost doing personality assessments internally and figuring out like what types of employees do you have at the company that could speak, the owner's love languages, maybe better than others, right? Maybe your margin minders, right? Maybe you have a super analytical person on your team that just fits that type of personality. So I think doing a personality assessment internally to see how your team communicates with people is going to match your owners very
Yeah.
well.
You want to show that next slide for this? So again, I'm a big fan of FAQ pages and resource centers on your website, a lot, mostly in regards to search engine optimization. It's a great way to start ranking for property management based keywords, is starting to build out that content. So, if you only have one page about the business or join our program on your website, I would encourage you to kind of deep dive and start developing more content.
I totally agree. I think people gloss over that. They're just so focused on attracting guests. And especially like right now, homeowner acquisition is a buzzword. Like everybody's talking about it and looking for ways to do it. And this is a great way to attract new homeowners, but your existing homeowners are really going to appreciate the time and effort that you're putting into that too.
Yeah, and this also kind of bleeds into trainings and informational type stuff that you can do. It doesn't have to be an hour-long webinar or anything like that. Just once a quarter, just sort of host an open Zoom meeting where owners can join, and you could show them the owner portal or have a recording and available and link it in your quarterly owner newsletter, bi-monthly owner newsletter, just to keep reaffirming the fact that you have the access to my team, and you have access to all of these tools and things like that. So gift receiving, I think we're getting behind this a lot more. We've really looked at the guest side of the house with gift receiving, like having little things in the units to kind of instill your brand. I spend a lot of time talking about guest acquisition, and especially when we're talking about OTA guests that are coming in, to have something branded, but your owners really want that thoughtfulness as well. So, holiday, not just around the holidays, but when they arrive, something, if they're doing an owner stay, something when they show up that's branded towards you. Like, I want to keep your brand in front of these owners, because that is important. We don't want them, shopping anywhere else, but just showing, that they're arriving and that you care. Grace, what other ideas do you have for this one?
No, I agree. I think a nice little gift in the house always goes a long way. And I also think it doesn't have to be a gift. It can be a message or an email that they receive, maybe to express thanks for loyalty. Like, if I've been here for a year, like, we really appreciate you being here, or you've been here for 30 years, or however long it's going to be.
Anniversary, I like that.
Yeah, a little anniversary message. That also kind of speaks to people who are kind of techie or data minded, like, wow, you're really keeping track of this and you're on top of it. I didn't even know I'd been here 30 years, kind of thing. So I know that if we're looking at marketing budgets and we don't necessarily want to go buy a bunch of potholders or whatever, like, there's other ways that you can get around that and be just as effective.
Yeah, and in the phone system inside of Streamline, you're able to keep track of how long that owner's been in your program. And so that can trigger different communication based on number of years, number of days. So there's a lot of triggers and automation we can set up.
And I think anything that makes your inventory feel like an exclusive club is always good too. So it kind of flips that dynamic where instead of like scrapping for homeowners, they're scrambling to get into your program because maybe you have a pool or some type of memberships or perks that those homeowners get by being part of your program. And you can think about what that might be based on where you are.
Yeah, similar to kind of how we do a loyalty program with guests or build those out, we can absolutely apply a lot of that gift receiving to owners. So I love the perks idea.
Yeah, and almost having maybe two tiers to your portfolio, right?
Mm.
And once they, reach all of yeah, exactly, they go to the second tier right?
Yeah, I like that. I think, again, all of this is about segmentation and personalization. So really being able to track whether it's in a software like Streamline, but really having good notes and making sure your team is collaborating on those notes, that really helps, especially for this particular love language, because timing is sort of everything. It goes a long way. Grace, you want to kick off this one?
Yeah, so marketing touch. Touch symbolizes closeness, presence, and trust. It's about the connection through contact. You can jump over to the next slide if you want, Kaylin. Foster experiences that feel real and grounded and create connections that feel personal and authentic and not transactional. And I think it just kind of comes back to it. Sometimes it's a great idea to work with a team, maybe a strategic account manager or somebody maybe from the outside looking in who can give you a little bit of guidance on places throughout your marketing efforts where you might have an opportunity to improve. Like maybe it's just need to, freshen up your brand, or your website has some opportunities where you can optimize or add a few things that might make it more appealing to a prospective homeowner who's looking around and comparing.
Yeah, I think that outside visibility can really help PMs as well. I mean, with companies like Bluetent, it's really cool because we're working with managers all around the country. So we've got ideas floating all over the place of being able to see what's really been working, or different strategies that people are leveraging for owner retention or owner acquisition. Same goes for guest. So I think that's always a cool opportunity. I do spend a lot of time doing kind of strategy sessions that are looking at all parts of your business. I think I love the branded tactical items to spark joy. Like this, again, to Grace's point, doesn't have to be something super expensive, but it really having like stress balls or something kind of funny like that with your logo on it. I think that it really goes a long way with these owners. And then just making sure your communication in general is dialed in. If someone else from the outside looking in can kind of help you design that, it might take the complexities out of it for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, sometimes we get stuck in, well, this has worked for so long. Like you might have that homeowner who's been with your program for 30 years, and there's things that they're like, man, I wish you would bring back the book where I could sit on the beach and look through it or whatever. But, marketing is kind of a moving target, and just being aware that you want to keep things fresh and maybe have an outside set of eyes every once in a while, and making sure that you're kind of keeping up with what might be going on out there. We have a lot of new homeowners in the vacation rental industry. Like a lot of properties have changed hands over the past 5 or 6 years. We have a lot of younger homeowners. So they're looking for different things now than they may have been a few years ago, which might have been the last time you refreshed your website.
Yeah, and I think that's why we really want to do webinars like this, because those owner profiles are changing pretty dramatically. And this is our chance to really kind of lock it in and keep track of them better, because we really didn't have to work that hard before in CIS. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also think too, having a software with a strong CRM, right, can help you segment out that data, whether that owner has converted into your program or maybe they haven't converted yet. But what super helpful is the Bluetent team can actually go into your Streamline system and segment out that data, so we can really create marketing messages that relate to those homeowners.
Yeah, 100%. So that's why we really want to, from an email automation standpoint, there's a lot we can do with anniversary type emails. You can set that up through us, or we can help you. The other place where I think we can build brand equity for both guests and owners is more videography, like interviewing your team and things like that. That kind of goes a long way. It doesn't have to necessarily be professional, but even funny clips of your team, I think that really resonates with owners to kind of show that you care, and they can be funny and flighty, but knowing that you have good tabs on who's working at your offices, and being able to share that stuff with owners, it goes a long way. So takeaway here, connection drives commitment for sure. Really just making sure we are aware of who's in our portfolio. Our team is aware of the kind of personalities that are in our portfolio, and then driving in connections. And that's really through different types of communication, styles of communication. And I think we kind of covered a lot of that in these different love languages.
And also you did. And also being mindful that if you are not communicating with your homeowners, somebody else probably is. So you want to be driving that conversation and have the reins.
Yeah.
Also too, this is going to help with referrals, right? Maybe that owner wants to buy another investment property, right? I mean, this could open up the doors too for a lot more opportunity.
Great point.
Yeah. And one size does not fit all. That's just a big one, I think, for internal communications. And that's why I like sort of assigning different owner profiles to specific people on your team as sort of an account manager style, especially for those that are needy or that are really important to retain. And then little things go a long way. Again, little webinars, trainings, email communication, a handwritten note, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be expensive, but just making sure you're building that into your business cadence, because consistency is absolutely the key. So I would encourage everyone to just sort of look at their marketing plan and kind of fit in owner marketing into that. It doesn't have to be as aggressive as guests, but like to Grace's point, if you're not communicating or offering or sharing what your capabilities and what your strengths are as a property manager, somebody else is going to. So this is just a little test. This is a good way to get a hold of us. We're monitoring this form. There's a lot of different ways we can work with anybody on this webinar. So we can really look at marketing strategies. We can talk about software, pieces of the software. Kaylin can take anyone that's interested through the Streamline process or the homeowner acquisition tool in Streamline as well. Grace and I are always available to do kind of marketing strategy calls to see how you want to level up or what different channels and levers we can pull to really help you with owner retention strategies, owner acquisition strategies, and then of course we get into the whole guest acquisition and retention piece of the pie as well. So thanks everybody for being here. We'll give you a couple minutes back of your time. We've got one last question actually. Kaylin, I don't know if you can answer this. Is there a report that you can run in Streamline to see who's using the portal or if they've ever logged in? That's actually a good question.
Like activity, right?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. You know what? Let me follow up with you. I do know that throughout the system, right, that is something that we really heavily focus on is tracking activity at the unit level, but also at the reservation level too, so you can see what's actually happening. More of an internal purpose, but let me see if we can pull a report to see actually who's logged in and what type of activity they're doing. Like
That's
maybe
really
what,
good because that could be a whole
yeah.
nother segment you could build out as here's my 52 owners that have never logged into the portal. And I know
Right.
that's kind of potential churn list, like that they're talking and they're not engaging with me. So I need to go the extra mile. So that's a really good question.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And then we've got one more. How do you turn on items in the owner portal? I don't know if we can demo the software today, Rhonda or Rana. We will follow up with you. We're databasing these questions, so we'll be able to reach out and have someone show you how to toggle and turn things on and off. But to Kaylin's point there, I think it's super important to the owner profile or the owner avatar to make sure you are aware of what's turned on and off, because it can get a little dramatic if you have the wrong things turned on that you just don't really want your rate-minded owners going in and bugging you about. Just keep it to the side.
Yeah, and Robin, really quick, I want to add something there is, inside of your Streamline system, there's actually at the user level, there is a key that is assigned to every owner. And so you can actually click on that key and it'll take you directly into the owner portal. So you can see exactly what that owner is seeing from their view. And I think that's so important too, because if an owner's calling in, right, and they're like, hey, I'm seeing something in my portal. Can you walk me through it? I'm looking at this report. You're able to go in there with them and walk them through it, which I think is just really cool.
Yeah, that's especially ones that aren't engaging with you, being able to show them that stuff is super clutch. But we got a lot of good. Can we limit the certain owners are allowed per day? The time, no, sorry, Brian asked, can we limit the time certain owners are allowed to be on per day? Meaning
that would be pretty awesome.
Sitting in the owner portal, just kind of watching the calendar. I wish we could, but I don't think
it's like, you've timed out here, sir.
Yeah, maximum usage. Yeah, you're kicked out of the software. But no, thanks everybody. I hope we see you on the road. This was a lot of fun. We'll keep doing these webinars, but in person is always a blast. And we hope to see you in Texas next week or at our Rise and Shines or at upcoming conferences.